Okay, welcome everyone to my YouTube channel. I skipped doing commentary between the 72 and 73 seasons. And I figured, you know what, I wanted to kind of cover some things here and kind of explain kind of what happened and where things seem to be going in terms of the simulation. So I wanted to get an opportunity here to at least have one video where I kind of talk through the off season again, like as I was doing before, um, and kind of explain again just some of the changes and some of the things I observed through the 1973 simulation. Things didn't go exactly the way I feel that they should have from an accuracy perspective. Again, I've talked about this before, accuracy versus plausibility. I feel like a little bit on the plausibility side, there was some strain there, and I think it had to do with, as anyone who's watched the videos, scores being just very low. I think I figured out why that is. There's some adjustments I've had to make in terms of just the global ratings for some of the players. I think it looked like it was an endurance issue for the defenses in terms of fatigue. Defenses maybe not tiring quickly enough. Maybe rated a little bit too high given the era for the given the fact that you've got quarterbacks that aren't as accurate in the 70s as they are today. And certainly that kept scores low. And there's other factors too. Field goal kicking, it was not as sharp back then as it is now, even though they had a 10-yard advantage with goalposts at the front of the end zone. You'll notice as we transition from 73 to 74, one of the biggest changes that you're going to see here is the goalposts moving to the back of the end zone. So now we're getting into more of the modern era, if you will. Things are still going to be very similar in terms of the style of play, though. You're not going to see, spread offenses. You're not going to see shotgun formations, not till 75 when Dallas starts to use it. But generally, you're just going to see some very conservative play. No teams, I don't think, are rated as gambler in terms of their offensive approach. So you're not going to see a lot of teams going forward on fourth down and things like that. Back then teams, it could be fourth and inches at the opponent's 30-yard line, and they would typically just either attempt a field goal or punt it. That's just how teams played back then. Nevertheless, I wanted to start here because we're about to convert to 74. So again, I just wanted to show everyone here where the goalposts are moving to the back of the end zone. It's telling us how many players are quote unquote retiring, although some may come back, but most will retire, and adding 270 new players, 188 of which are rookies. So let's go ahead and click Let's Do It. And first thing I do is I click choose the schedule. So we're going to go to 1974, which is one of the default schedules, and automatically the postseason format is already set, which is 6 divisions, 2 wild cards. That's 1970 to 77. So that's all set. We're going to check the league artwork, make sure that lines up so all the teams look the way they're supposed to. Um, let's see, 1974, NFL 74. Again, a goalpost now at the back of the end zone. So yeah, we're all set here. So let's go ahead and let's double check audio and photos, players, coaches, default. That's good. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and right off the bat, I'm just going to click back up. That kind of locks everything in place in case something goes awry. I can recover it. So here we are. Same divisional lineups as before. Same divisions, conferences, teams. No differences there. This is 1974. Um, let's see. Let's go to, well, first of all, let's check history. So just wanted to recap the way the 1973 season ended. I mentioned the fact that I didn't really like the way the season played during the season itself. In the postseason, I did do a global adjustment on the ratings. I went into the I'll show you what I did. I went into the game settings. I went into realism, and I under defensive players tire. I changed that to tire defenses faster. What that did was that increased the points. That made it a little bit more that just uh, allowed for more offense. Um, it did increase the yards per carry for rushing, which was probably a little bit higher than it should be back then. Teams averaged between 3.8 and about 4 yards a carry on average. Um, by lowering this, it brings it up to about 4.2. Passing was still an issue, and I think that was one of the things that I adjusted for 74 was that I made a slight adjustment lower on every defensive player in terms of their pass defense. Didn't have much in the way of shutdown quarterbacks the way you do nowadays. There were a few. Again, there's exceptions. You think of guys like Mel Blunt, Lamar Parrish, and some others that are just those shutdown corners that are just as good as probably any player today. So those guys maintain nines, but generally speaking, I lowered everyone by a point. So hopefully that gives a little bit of a boost to the passing game. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Go back into history, and again, just show you where the postseason ended up. So the Dolphins beat the Rams 22-6. The interesting thing about this one was this was the first season in the Super Bowl era, which started in '66, that I actually had the Super Bowl winner match what happened in real life. It wasn't against the Vikings, which is who Miami beat in '71 in my alternate reality here, but they beat the Rams in this one by a similar score. I think in real life they beat the Vikings 24-7. So this was a 22-6 win. Larry Zonka was really the key driver on offense, but it was Manny Fernandez who was the MVP of the game. He scored a safety by sacking John Hadle, the Rams quarterback, and in addition, he had I think two other sacks and just some big defensive plays that earned him the MVP award. So the Dolphins were the champions in 1973. So they'll defend that championship in '74, um, and we'll see where that goes. So let's go back here. Um, so the first thing I like to do. So first of all, let's take a look at the career leaders. So this is through, gosh, now this started in 1951, so it's about 22 seasons. And let's go to passing first. All-time leading passer in terms of yards, John Unitas. You'll see the names here that are pretty typical, and the names probably mostly match what it looked like back in 1974. Um, so, John Unitas, Bart Starr, Fran Tarkenton, all familiar names, total ratings, highest rated passer through, again, I think it was 20, about 22 seasons at that point. That would have been Norm Van Brocklin, who played for both the Rams and the Eagles, followed by Y.A. Tittle, Bobby Lane, Frank Ryan. So again, some big names there. All-time leading touchdown thrower, Bart Starr. So those are some big ones there. Um, let's go to rushing. All-time leading rusher, no surprise there, Jim Brown. He was the all-time leading rusher for quite a long time in real life, as you can recall, up until about 1984, I believe, is when Walter Payton eclipsed him. And Peyton hasn't started playing yet, so we're still in '74. He will be a rookie in the next season. But Jim Brown, there, as you can see, he's the all-time leading rusher with just over 10,000 yards, followed by Jim Taylor. So let's see who had the most touchdowns. Jim Taylor leads all rushers in touchdowns. Let's see, top receiver of all time, Don Maynard, followed by Lance Alworth. Fred Blitnikoff. And you have Jackie Smith, Pete Retzlaff. Um, yards, again, it's Maynard and Allworth. Touchdowns, Don Maynard. So yeah, Don Maynard was really the guy as of 1973 for receivers. Let's see, defense. All-time leading tackler. It's now Nick Bonacani. Up until I think the previous year, I think it was Bill George, former Ram and Bear. So looks like Nick Bonacani is now the all-time leader. Again, look at all these names. These are most of these are Hall of Famers. Not all of them, but most of them. All-time leading leader is Deacon Jones, followed by Doug Atkins, Verlin Biggs, Jim Marshall. Again, all familiar names. All-time leading, um, all-time leader in terms of interceptions, Dick LeBeau. Let's see. Kicker. We'll just look at points there. Excuse me. George Blanda, followed by Luke Rosa. If you go by percentage, it's Bruce Gossett, followed by Jim Bakken. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Okay, those are really the main ones. The thing I like to look at most of all in the off season is the transactions. So this tells us really who's coming into the league brand new. It doesn't give us. I wish it would. I wish it would show the retirements, but it doesn't do that. But this is pretty good because it allows me to look at all the movements of veteran players who've moved. They didn't have free agency back then, but there were players that would, through trades, would switch from one team to another. Most of the time, it was trades. Sometimes it was just um, maybe they would get waived by the team that they were with, and they would get signed to a different team. So I like to look through here to see any of the big names that pop out. Ahmad Rashad leaves the Cardinals, signs with the Bills. Let's see. See if any of the big names jump out. All familiar names, just not big names that I can see. Let's see. Ray Jarvis signs with Detroit from Buffalo. So the Mad Stork, Ted Hendricks, moves from Baltimore to Green Bay. A lot of people forget that he played briefly for the Packers before he would go on to the Raiders. So that starts in 1974. Jack Concannon goes from Chicago to Green Bay. A lot of movement with the Oilers. Let's see. Curly Culp moves to Houston from Kansas City. That's one big name there. Kansas City's got a few names in here. They get Barry Pearson from Pittsburgh. John Matuzak from Houston. So there's another guy that ends up with the Raiders, but spent a brief period of time with a different team after he left his initial team, which was the Houston Oilers. Let's see, Willie McGee goes to the Rams. And there's a big one. So Craig Morton leaves Dallas. He gets signed by the Giants. Looks like, Tom Landry's finally decided that Roger Staubach, almost 10 years after he was drafted, he's now the starting quarterback. Ron Smith goes to the Raiders from San Diego, along with Frank Pitts from Cleveland. There's a big name there. Bill Berge signs with Philadelphia. He comes over from Cincinnati. Turkey Jones there from Cleveland to Philadelphia. Let's see. Don't see a lot of other big names here. Deacon Jones goes to the Redskins. At this point, he's age 36. He's the all-time leading, sack leader. So big name, but certainly in the back end of his career. Mark Mosley goes to Washington from Houston. He'd have a big role to play later in the decade and into the 80s for Washington. So now let's go to the draft. Um, so we got two picks. I believe Clint Longley he was picked first in the supplemental draft. So just want to make that clear. He was not the overall #1 draft pick. But Too Tall Jones looks like he goes #1 for Dallas. Um, let's see, Bo Matthews, John Hicks, Wayman Bryant, John Dutton goes to Baltimore. Let's see what other big names jump out here. John Capoletti, Randy Gradishar. There's a big one. Goes to Denver. He's the 14th overall pick. And Lynn Swan, with the 21st pick, goes to Pittsburgh. Roger Carr goes to Baltimore. Dave Casper gets drafted by the Raiders in the second round, and Jack Lambert goes to Pittsburgh with the 46th overall. Dolphins get Benny Malone. This was right around the time when you had some players leaving for the World Football League, and the Miami Dolphins were one of the teams that were hit hardest by that. I think they lost both Jim Kick and Larry Zonka. They both went to play for Memphis in the World Football League, so that was probably why they went out and drafted Benny Malone. The Niners draft Delvin Williams. The big names here. Nat Moore goes to Miami. John Stallworth goes to Pittsburgh in the 4th round. So they got Swan and Stallworth in the same draft. It's crazy. Henry Childs drafted by Atlanta. I did not know that. He's big. He was big with the Saints in the late 70s. So he was picked by Atlanta, it looks like, initially. Let's see what else we got here. Not too many big names jumping out. All familiar names. All of them are familiar names, just not big names. Billy White Shoes Johnson goes to the Oilers there in the 15th round. Okay, and that's it. So those are all the players that were drafted. These are all the undrafted free agents. At least in the game, they didn't have draft positions. So I think most of these in real life were actually free agents. But if you see any that were drafted, let me know in the comments. I'll get that fixed. But these are all the guys that were taken on as undrafted free agents. Ronnie Coleman with Houston. Houston had some guys that ended up being starters. C.L. Whittington, Dave Beverly, their punter. The Chiefs got Cleo Miller. Lou Picone goes to the Jets. Pat Leahy. Dave Jennings goes to the Giants. Doug Coder. Randy Grossman. I didn't know he was an unsigned free agent. I didn't know Donnie Shell was either. Okay. All right. That's everything. All right. So let's go ahead and let's simulate the first half of the season. We'll quick simulate it. and then we'll pick up with a game of the week um, starting after that. So again, I'm going to go ahead and hit back up just one more time just to be safe before we start doing this. Let's go to week 1. And let's go ahead and simulate. Let's see how this looks. Okay, these look a little bit better in terms of the types of scores. All right, so Atlanta upsets Dallas in the very first game, 27-21. That game was won in overtime. Let's take a look at that. And by the way, this is the first season with which there are overtime games. So that's pretty cool. So you're not going to see as many ties. So this is what happened in overtime. Fumble. And then right after that, it looks like Atlanta is able to score the winning touchdown. So big upset there. Oakland defeats Buffalo 14-13. That was a big game, by the way. Two playoff contenders, and it was actually a rematch of the prior year's divisional playoff game that the Bills won in a major upset. So let's take a look at how this was won. Looks like the Raiders won it in the second quarter on a touchdown throw from Stabler to Biletnikoff. There it is. So the Raiders get revenge for the playoff loss. Bears defeat Detroit. Cincinnati defeats Cleveland. Here's another overtime game. Rams over the Broncos by a touchdown. James Harris, the quarterback there. And here's Bertelsen with the game-winning touchdown in overtime. So there's that. Here's another overtime game. The Packers defeating the Vikings. There's the field goal. In overtime, so they defeat Minnesota, and again, that's a pretty big upset. San Diego defeats Houston. New look Chargers there. That's when they started to look like the Rams with the darker blue and yellow. Jets defeat Kansas City 35-16. Major upset. The defending Super Bowl champion Dolphins fall to New England. San Francisco defeats New Orleans. Let's go back real quick. I just want to see, how did the Patriots pull that off? Is that a last-minute field goal? It was. So after the Dolphins went ahead late in the game, Patriots looked like they drove downfield and scored the winning touchdown, or the winning field goal, sorry. And that was with 2 minutes left, so Miami failed to get back down the field. Okay, Redskins over the Giants. Steelers win their opener big over Baltimore, 35-10. And St. Louis defeats Philadelphia 26-20. So let's go to week 2. Let's go ahead and simulate these games. Let's reveal the results. Atlanta goes 2-0. They defeat San Francisco 24-3. Green Bay wins again. They defeat Baltimore 28-23. Miami gets back in the win column. They defeat Buffalo. Now Buffalo's now 0-2. So the Bills, who were in the AFC title game the year previous, now find themselves in a 0-2 hole to start the year. Jets are 2-0. They defeat Chicago. Cincinnati spanks San Diego 45-10. So they're 2-0. Cleveland wins pretty convincingly over Houston, 34-17. Pittsburgh shuts out Denver, 24-0. So the Broncos are winless. Minnesota evens their record. They defeat Detroit 14-12. This is the last season in Tiger Stadium, by the way, for the Lions. Rams defeat the Saints 23-9. Patriots go to 2-0. They defeat the Giants 31-17. Raiders are 2-0. They defeat Kansas City 24-20. Dallas evens their record. They defeat Philadelphia 28-14, and the Redskins go to 2-0. They defeat St. Louis. All right. Let's go ahead and simulate these games. Week 3. Buffalo hands the Jets their first loss of the year. Let's see what OJ did here. Not too many yards, but looks like he must have been the only guy there that was doing much on offense, because he's the MVP of the game. Dallas goes to 2-1. They keep the Giants winless 31-20. Green Bay goes to 3-0. That's a surprise. 27-7 now. So they're 3-0. Kansas City gets their first win, 23-7 over winless Houston. Minnesota defeats Chicago. The Patriots with a big win over the Rams, 28-20. So the Patriots are 3-0. Saints win big over Atlanta. That's their first victory and the first loss for Atlanta. So it's 41-14. Shellacking. Let's see. Eagles win. Baltimore's now 0-3. And in a big showdown in Pittsburgh, the Raiders defeat the Steelers 21-13 to remain undefeated. Let's take a look at this game. This is a big one. Let's see what happened here. So Bradshaw just couldn't get it done in the fourth quarter. 3 interceptions, 2 of them by Willie Brown. Here was the touchdown that put it away. Marv Hubbard off that right side. So the Raiders win that game. Miami defeats San Diego. Cincinnati is 3-0. They defeat San Francisco. St. Louis wins. They're now 2-1. They defeat Cleveland, and the Redskins are now 3-0. They keep the Broncos winless at 0-3. Let's simulate this week, and then we'll take a look at the standings. Saints 20-14 over the Bears. Cincinnati, big game against Washington there, between two unbeatens. The Bengals come out ahead 24-10. Here's an overtime game. The Browns defeating the Raiders. The Raiders get their first loss. Let's take a look at the winning touchdown. Greg Pruitt, 27-yard touchdown run. Handoff from Mike Phipps off the right side and into the end zone. So an upset win there for Cleveland. And their record is now 2-2. Cowboys defeat the Vikings. So they avenge their playoff loss to Minnesota, 14-7. Buffalo edges Green Bay, giving the Packers their first loss, 10-9. Pittsburgh recovers from their previous loss. They defeat Houston, 31-24. The Oilers are still winless. Denver defeats Kansas City, 37-13. Rams win 14-10. Miami over the Jets. New England over Baltimore. Atlanta wins. San Diego wins. And the Cardinals go to 3-1. They defeat San Francisco. So let's go ahead and let's go back to the standings here real quick. Washington, Dallas, and St. Louis are all tied for first place in the East. So that one's going to be a hotly contested division. Green Bay ahead of Minnesota by a game in the Central. Rams and Falcons tied 3-1 in the West. In the AFC East, New England is surprisingly ahead of everybody. They are 4-0. And Cincinnati's ahead of Pittsburgh. They're 4-0. And the Raiders are out ahead of everyone in the West. So let's go back. Week 5. We'll do 3 more. We'll do 2 more weeks. Right? 6, 7. We'll do 3 more weeks. Okay, the Bears shut out the Falcons. So some minor upset there. The Bills defeat Baltimore. Cleveland defeats Cincinnati, so that's the Bengals' first loss. And a low-scoring game in Denver. The Broncos defeat the Saints 6-3. San Francisco wins. The Packers upset the Rams 15-13. Steelers shut out the Chiefs. Minnesota defeats Houston 7-0. New England finally loses, this time to the Jets 21-7. The Raiders defeat the Chargers in what looks like a field goal game 9-6. The Cowboys defeat St. Louis in a big NFC East matchup 20-14. And Miami defeats Washington 19-10. So they go to 4-1. Okay, here's another overtime game that won on a touchdown. Atlanta defeats New Orleans. Let's take a look at that. On a touchdown run by Haskell Standback. There's the winning touchdown there. Buffalo defeats New England, so they're 4-2. The Bears defeat Green Bay. Philadelphia upsets Dallas in Dallas. Let's take a look at that. How did they pull that off? Tom Dempsey field goal. There you go. So the Eagles even their record at 3-3. The Broncos even their record. They've won 3 in a row now since starting 0-3. Cardinals defeat the Oilers in overtime. Let's look at that touchdown. 10-yard run by Jim Otis. There's that score. Rams edge out San Francisco 9-6. Kansas City upsets Miami in Miami 13-3. Wow. Minnesota wins big. Jets win. Raiders lose in overtime to Cincinnati. The Bengals are rolling. They're 5-1 now. And they win this one in overtime. There's the winning field goal. So the Bengals appear to be playoff bound in 1974. Steelers continue to roll. They're staying with Cincinnati at 5-1, and the Redskins are now 4-2. They defeat the Giants. Giants are winless. Okay, so here we're going to go ahead and simulate this last week here. Bills defeat Chicago. The Bengals continue to roll. Houston is 0-7. The Broncos defeat Cleveland, so they're 4-3. Packers are 5-2. They keep Detroit winless, 34-20. Miami barely defeats Baltimore, 20-17. New England upsets Minnesota. The Eagles defeat New Orleans. The Jets upset the Rams. Dallas rolls over the Giants at the Yale Bowl. Pittsburgh defeats Atlanta. San Diego defeats Kansas City. The Raiders shut out the 49ers. The Battle of the Bay. And in a showdown, St. Louis defeats Washington. So let's go ahead and take a look at the standings. So now we have Dallas and St. Louis tied for first in the East, followed by the Redskins and Eagles, both at 4-3. Packers a game ahead of Minnesota. And the Rams and Falcons are tied with a record of 4-3. There's a 4-way tie for first place in the AFC East. That's I've never seen that before. This late in the season. Miami, Buffalo, the Jets, New England, all 5-2. That's crazy. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati are tied for first in the Central, 6-1, and the Raiders have a 1-game lead over Denver with a record of 5-2. So let's take a look at the leaders. Passing. Craig Morton leads all passers in terms of yards, but ratings-wise, it's Bob Greasy followed by Ken Anderson. Rushing yards, O.J. Simpson, no surprise there, followed by Otis Armstrong. Chip Myers for the Bengals leads the league in. Oh no, wait a minute. I have to sort it first. Charlie Wade for the Bears is the top receiver, along with Bob Tucker. And yardage-wise, it's Cliff Branch. Let's look at defense real quick. Tackles, Bill Berge. Sacks, Cedric Hardman. Interceptions, it's a tie between Willie Brown and Mike Wagner. Let's see, what else could we? Let's look at injuries. Any major injuries? Anybody out for the season? A couple players, no big names. Okay. Well, Roger Carr out for the season. That doesn't help. The Colts are already not doing well. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at. Let's go ahead and hit back up. And we'll take a look at week number 8. So it'll be Cincinnati at Baltimore, Vikings and Bears. This is a big game here, so that's a possibility. St. Louis at Dallas. There's Oakland at Denver. It's also a key game. Washington at Green Bay is a key game. So is Atlanta and Miami. So is Buffalo, New England. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. I tend to focus on the games where both teams have winning records, meaning both teams are basically playoff contenders. So there's a lot of games to choose from here in week number 8. So I'll have to think about this one. This one, well, I will decide. Maybe I'll just go with that very first one. I'll go with St. Louis, Dallas. Okay. Well, that'll be the game we pick it up with in our next videos. So, and that'll just be the game itself. I won't have any commentary on that one. So, thanks for watching, and yeah, leave comments. Any comments you have, anything you saw that looked weird or funny, feel free to let me know. Thanks.